who remember that, the veterans who were exposed to that withering fire and still live are few. But we want to remember those men and that effort with great honor today. And with that in mind, we have a most fascinating guest, Larkin Spivey, who has written a couple of books. This one is called Battlefields and Blessings, which is an amazing book of stories, anecdotes, reflections on the Second World War. And it follows, and then following that, another book called Stories of Faith and Courage from the Vietnam War, also by Larkin Spivey. Both of them award winners, the Silver Medal Award from the Military Writers Society of America, Branson Stars and Flags Book Award. Larkin, welcome. You have more than a passing interest in this because you yourself were a Marine, right?
Yes, I was, Jim.
Now, when I read about Marines, I'm intrigued because it seems to me that to become a Marine, you got to be as tough as nails. I mean, is it just mythological, or is it in fact the case that they almost try to kill you, training you to be a Marine?
Well, it's tough. It's meant to be. You have to be to face combat. Marines are proud of their toughness and their esprit de corps, their ability to function under hard times.
And you did have hard times. Now, you were not in the Second World War.
No.
But you were in Vietnam.
Yes, I was.
Now, we could sit here and talk now for the next 5 hours. And when I was reading through your books, my eyes glazed over after a while because there's so many stories. I mean, I had to kind of take a break and come back. Where did you get all these stories?
I get them from everywhere. Talking to veterans, a lot of veterans. Unfortunately, we're losing a lot of World War II veterans every day. I was just reading the Globe and Mail this morning, and a Robert Mackett passed away recently, who was an RCAF pilot in Bomber Command in Europe, won the Distinguished Flying Cross, and he passed away. And there were two other World War II veterans in today's paper.
I'm the son of a World War II veteran. He's 89 and thinks he's 49.
Yeah, good for him.
But I have sat, with rapt attention as a little kid. I remember many times his dad would talk about the situation, and he's very modest about it because he got into the war just as it was ending. But nevertheless, he was vitally involved there in Holland, and the Dutch just love the Canadians because they credit the Canadians with having liberated Holland.
Yes. But
when you reflect on these stories, let's talk about the book about Vietnam for a minute. There's a definite personal touch there. What about Larkin Spivey himself? When you think about your Vietnamese experience, is there an event, a story, something that happened to you that stands out?
Jim, I went to Vietnam as a 26-year-old hard-charging Marine and very much a religious skeptic at that time in my life. And I guess I can bear witness to the fact that there are no atheists in foxholes. But sometimes it can be a pretty superficial kind of a faith. Afterwards, I didn't give much credit to God for answering my prayers that I uttered when I was really afraid. And I didn't thank Him for it. And it was only many years later that I closed that loop and found Jesus Christ. But there were many other Marines and soldiers who went through Vietnam especially. It was a period of questioning in our country, of a lot of questioning of institutions, of government, of the church. And many men went there with a very superficial or no faith, like I did. And it was only much later that they were able to find those answers. But I do believe that when you go through that valley, when you go through that deep questioning, when you face the evils of humanity and the things that happen in this world, that you do have a chance of coming to a closer and deeper relationship with God when you finally reach out to Him.
What was your responsibility in Vietnam? What were you in charge of?
I was a rifle company commander, which about 200 Marines in a rifle company, and we were fighting along the DMZ which is the hottest area at that time in the war, in places like Cam Lo and Dong Ha, Khe Sanh, and it was an intense form of combat. We were fighting North Vietnamese regular army units coming across the DMZ trying to threaten areas in South Vietnam.
So was this like jungle fighting? You were in the forest, or were you out in the open?
Well, these were jungle-covered mountains, which is the worst of all possible terrain. It was hard to navigate, hard to go through. Very seldom had good visibility, and the firefights were intense, and you often couldn't tell too much what was happening, except until you closed with and came to grips with whoever you were fighting with.
The Vietnamese War has been romanticized and even glorified in so many movies, and books over the years. You get the impression watching some of these movies that it was a constant battle with booby traps, heat, disease, ambushes, and Agent Orange. Is that all true, or was that a bit of an overstatement, some of those movies?
Well, no war is pleasant. I mean, there's never been a war fought in a reasonable climate or a reasonable terrain. It's always difficult. I don't think Vietnam was any different in that respect. It was more controversial because it was a controversial war in America. There was a lot of dissension about it, and I don't need to go into it, but young men that went over there came home to a lot of abuse and controversy when they came home. So the spiritual journey of the men that went is complicated.
Now, did you experience that rejection, that polarizing, that marginalizing that so many Vietnam vets faced?
Well, the amazing thing is I came back from Vietnam and I came to Canada. I was assigned to the Canadian Command and Staff College in Kingston for a year. So I left the mildew and jungle rot and came to cold, clear Canadian air, and it was just uplifting. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I enjoyed my tour with Canadians, and I've always felt at home in Canada ever since that experience.
Now, Larkin, both of your books here, Stories of Faith and Courage from the Vietnam War, Stories of Faith and Courage from World War II, Battlefields and Blessings, are kind of laid out like devotionals. If you want to just look over my shoulder here, I just opened this up at random. Here's May 13th, May 14th, and every day of the year there is a story that has, and I love the fact that you don't try to preach. You tell a story, the essential life lessons are there, but you don't even overemphasize those. You actually respect the intelligence of the reader, which I really appreciated. But then every day you have highlighted a scripture, and so 365 times 2, what is that? 607, almost 800 scriptures. Did you research all the scriptures yourself?
Yes.
And you?
It's a great spiritual exercise.
Yeah, no kidding.
To be in the Bible to that extent.
Yeah, as I was reading, I was thinking, my goodness. He either has spent an awful lot of time in the Bible himself, or he had some real good research assistants helping him, because the scriptures you choose are so appropriate to the story.
Well, thank you.
Very, very impressive, and it's unlike any devotional book I've ever read. I'm not finished them, by the way. I've read as much as I can up until this interview, and I'll read some more later. But when you think about some of these stories, one that sticks out to me, and I'm remembering her name, was it Margaret Covell? She was the gal. Covell?
Yes.
Who? Do you remember her story? She
worked in a POW camp in California, I believe, with Japanese prisoners.
And they asked her why, and her answer was?
Well, her parents were killed by the Japanese, and she said they were missionaries, and she felt that her parents would have wanted her to forgive the Japanese and to do her part to bring Christ to them. And the amazing thing, her story goes on and on. One of the Japanese prisoners went back home in witness to another Japanese ex-soldier whose name was Mitsuo Fuchida,
Right.
who happened to be the man who led the attack on Pearl Harbor.
That's right.
He was the man that shouted, "Tora, Tora,
Tora,
Tora,"
Tora, Tora.
and led the attack. And he said that was the proudest day of his life, up until the day he accepted Jesus Christ, because of this friend of his who had been in the POW camp with Peggy Covell, who had converted him to Christianity. And he came to Christ, and he became an evangelist himself. He came to America and preached.
Now, there's
the
a
gospel.
story. There's a story. Here's a gal who has every reason to hate the Japanese.
Yes.
They killed her parents. And as I recall, when I read that, she said, in explaining her actions, that her parents would have forgiven, so she was going to forgive.
Yes.
She ministers to these Japanese prisoners of war, leads one of them to Christ, who eventually goes and leads this guy to Christ, the Tora, Tora, Tora guy.
Yes.
Who led the attack, which was immortalized by Roosevelt as a day of infamy.
Yes.
And he becomes an evangelist.
Right. If Jesus Christ can reconcile Mitsuo Fuchida and other Americans who fought against him, can reconcile these people together, he can reconcile anything in this world.